Good evening. We'll wait for 30 seconds because the room's not filled up quite enough yet. So. Bob, are you ready? Mr. Duncan, are you ready? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our City Council meeting of August 8th. We'll go ahead and start with asking Captain Williams to lead us in the pledge.
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, we'd like to bring back an old tradition where we have one of our youth explorers come up and assist with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, of course.
So I'd like to invite down the captain of our Explorer unit, Rylan Fernandez, to help out.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Please place your hand on your chest. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Cadet. Okay, Jennifer, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Bogue, Councilmember Duncan, Councilmember Thorpe,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Beaver,
Here.
Mayor Avila.
Here. Okay, Ray, are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
Mr. Mayor, as you know, we have one council member unable to attend this evening. They requested that item number 18 be continued to the next meeting. And that would be up to the city council to decide that this evening. So.
Okay, gentlemen, what is your preference? Can we move it to the next meeting for his request? Okay, we'll do that real fast. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no opposition. Now, with respect to, let's see, changes to the agenda. Now, we move on to special presentations. Okay, the first one is a certificate of recognition to Yucaipa Police Department. And that will include Captain Williams and Lieutenant Robert Warwick. We have two presentations we'd love to give you, but maybe Mayor Pro Tem Beaver can paraphrase, go through it quickly so we don't have to stay here all evening.
Certificate of recognition presented to Captain James Williams and Lieutenant Robert Warwick for your outstanding leadership with the City of Yucaipa from November 25th, 2017 for Captain Williams through August 12th of 2022, and May 8th, 2021 for Lieutenant Warwick through August 12th of 2022. Your unwavering dedication to excellence, honor, and leadership provides inspiration to all and leaves an incredible mark on the community of Yucaipa. On behalf of the City Council, staff, and the community of Yucaipa, we hereby extend our sincere appreciation for your service and wish you continued success in your future endeavors. Signed, Mayor David Avila.
Thank you, gentlemen. Is there any comments you'd like to make to the gentlemen who are leaving us?
I would. I would like to say that you both have done a fantastic job. When the sheriff decided to put Captain Williams in, I didn't know Captain Williams. I just knew the guy that was leaving, and I was all freaked out because I didn't know what we were getting. And you've proved to be an excellent leader, excellent chief, and I really appreciate all your work you've done. You've always taken my call, and I know I've called you too many times, but you've always taken my call, and you've always responded, and I do appreciate that. And Mr. Warwick, you have been a pleasant lieutenant to work with, and again, I was concerned when they said they were going to change out. I think it was Julie that we had, and now she's our chief, right? But you've just been a pleasure to work with, done a fantastic job, and I have nothing but admiration and respect for both of you, and Yucaipa will never defund their police department.
Well, I don't call Captain Williams, I don't think I've called him at all. It's hard to break the rank structure idea in my mind as a maybe mayor pro tem up here, but I'm just a corporal in the law enforcement world. So it's hard for me to go get around skipping the lieutenant to talk to the captain. So Lieutenant, thank you for taking all my calls and text messages. I appreciate that. Certainly, Yucaipa is in a much better place now than it probably was when you guys took the helm, and we appreciate all the hard work you guys do. Your leadership is extraordinary. I know the men and women of Yucaipa, the sheriff station over there, and talking to them, they're sad to see you go. But better things. I know Joshua Tree is going to be a fun place there, 9 Charlie. I'm sure you're looking forward to that. But thank you guys for everything you've done for our city. We truly are a community because of the public safety aspect that you guys have helped hone and be the leaders of. So thank you.
Councilman Thorpe.
Captain and Lieutenant, thank you for your contribution to our community. Hate to see you both go. Appreciate it.
Succinct. Very good. And finally, they've pretty much said it all. On a personal note, it's always been an extreme pleasure to work with both of you gentlemen. Your sense of professionalism and humor helped carry you through your careers, I'm sure. And I know that many of the public who respect you both as lieutenant and captain have expressed to me that they're going to miss you. Well, we look forward to working with the new overhead. We are certainly never going to forget you, especially me. You guys are the greatest. Thank you so much. You came in at the right time, and you guys really, really bolstered the image, which was already good, but it's just, you guys are just rock stars. Thank you so much. I'd like to have the honor, have our picture taken with you down down there, and we can give you your certificates. Thank you very much.
One more for me real quick. Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Mr. City Manager, I see that there's 2 more presentations, one including FirstNet and Frontier Communications, yet I only have 1 certificate left. Is there another one around, or?
The presentation from Frontier is all about what they're going to do in our community. So not a certificate, but a presentation about some exciting things that they're providing for the community.
Okay, so I'd like to go ahead, gentlemen, and award the certificate of appreciation to FirstNet and kind of get this over with, and then we can get our presentation from Frontier Communications.
Thank you, Mayor Avila. I'd like to ask Lieutenant Warwick to speak a little bit about the amazing partnership that we had with FirstNet.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and members of the council, as you remember a short time ago, we had the Five Winds Festival here in the city, and it was the first time launching such an endeavor at that site. Early on, as this was in its planning stages, Megan and I conversed at one of our Monday morning meetings. Some of the concerns at the location were lack of cell phone coverage, certainly for the first responders, everybody in emergency services, but also for those attending the concert as well as the vendors to run their point of sale equipment off of Wi-Fi. So, as you know, prior to coming to Yucaipa, I worked in our public affairs division for a few years, and our department has a wonderful relationship with AT&T and specifically FirstNet. So I reached out to a longtime friend of mine who is one of the 2 here to accept the award. This is Julio Figueroa, and he is the Director of External and Legislative Affairs for AT&T for our region here, and he was very quick to help me. He pointed me in direction of Kevin Deep, who is a FirstNet consultant with AT&T, and together, working alongside Megan, they brought up, for those of you who were at the Five Winds Festival, there's no way you didn't see it, a huge FirstNet vehicle that was a portable cell phone tower to make it easier for everybody to communicate. They lent the city 20 cellular devices to use for the 2-day concert, made sure they had good cell phone coverage, and also some of the Wi-Fi hotspots. So all of the vendors were able to do their point of sale transactions. So this was all at no cost to the city. This is all based on relationships, and this is the kind of company that AT&T and FirstNet is. So I would like to invite up Julio Figueroa and Kevin Deep to accept the certificate on behalf of the city of Yucaipa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, for the opportunity, and Lieutenant Warwick. We're just here to help with FirstNet. We're just here for public safety and make sure that everyone was connected during that event. And I'm glad that it worked out for everyone.
Yes, of course, and now Mayor Pro Tem will read the proclamation.
Certificate of Appreciation. We hereby express our sincere appreciation to FirstNet for their participation in the Five Winds Country Music Festival. On behalf of the City Council, staff, and the community of Yucaipa, we hereby extend our sincere appreciation for your services. Signed, David Avila, Mayor.
Say something, Bobby?
Well, it was a complete success. We really appreciate what you did. The event was amazing, and we hope to do it annually, but we'll see how that turns out. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I will just say that hopefully next year there will be a site already built there, so we won't have to bring in a temporary site. But if that is needed, we'll be here to support the Sheriff's Department and the city, but there should be a permanent site in by next year.
Very nice.
Yeah, with my limited knowledge of FirstNet and the fine work you folks do over there, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know this event was important to us, but in the event of any type of disaster or catastrophe where communication is critical and yet compromised, I know firsthand that AT&T and FirstNet you guys were there. This is just an example of I for one, I was weary about what kind of communication we were going to have up there when I was trying to direct people into how to get to an area of the city that they haven't really been to before. A great example of the work and the technology you guys have backing up your product in order to make sure that public safety is supported and that communication aspect isn't lost. So thank you. Fine work you guys do.
Just to echo what they've already said, thank you very much for partnering with our community and the Sheriff's Department as well. Thank you.
You will probably see, if it's already in place, an application for a cell site. I would recommend you embrace a taller cell site to allow all 3 carriers to be on that cell site. I mean, of course, I'd just love AT&T to be on there, but your audience is probably not all AT&T customers. So if you allow all 3 carriers on there, the entire audience will be covered, including first responders by FirstNet. So when you see that application, consider the height that's needed to provide service for all 3 carriers, to provide that for all of your attendees at that concert.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm sure our staff heard that. I just like to say it's this kind of partnership, even though you're not in the forefront, it's still a necessary infrastructure that we have to have in order to have and keep having successful concerts and other activities at that venue. At this time, I'd also like to have our picture taken with you as we give your letter of appreciation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members and staff. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have the Frontier Communications presentation. Do we have staff who's going to introduce them, or are they just going to come up?
I think they're prepared to come up.
All right.
Is this middle button here? Okay. Mayor, City Council, my name is Doug McAllister. I am the Vice President of External Affairs for Frontier Communications, and I sincerely appreciate the time you've allowed us to come up and just do a quick presentation. I promise you be quick. I've spent a lot of years on your side of the dais and going through some presentations that I had to have a face for that I know how it feels sometimes. Although I would take a certificate if you have an extra one. That'd be nice.
I can write one out real
Okay, I
fast.
appreciate that. I'm not a bit surprised about the FirstNet thing. Anything Julio's involved with, I've worked with him in the past. He's always first class. So, yeah, good job. Where'd he go? They left. Okay, fine. He can see that in the video. I would like to take a few moments to kind of go through an abbreviated version of my presentation because I don't want to answer questions you're not asking. And at the same time, I want to allow for the questions you might have and introduce to you what has already begun here in your city with regard to fiber optics. So if we can go ahead, it's up there. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. Oh, I'm doing that. Frontier has gone through a metamorphosis, if you will, over the last few years. I used to be with Verizon many years ago as their Director of Government External Affairs. And the process of when Frontier purchased Verizon way back when and what they've been through since then, they've come to the point of view where they're now reformed in such a way that they're in the process of the largest fiber optic build in history. They're very focused on doing this, as I believe it's a 4 or 5 year build, and your city is involved in that. We are the ILAC, we're the phone company, and so any place we have a footprint like that, we're replacing the copper with fiber optic cabling, and I'm going to try to explain to you why that's a big deal going forward here. But that is one of the things they've had to do as far as changing their culture of how they're doing this and this is not their code, this is mine. But I'm summarizing how those folks, when they came and found me earlier this year to come back and help them with this thing, the kind of the attitude I encountered, and that simply is that if we're going to do something bigger than we've ever done before, we had better get really good at doing business better than we've ever done before. And so that's kind of the process here. And so part of the reason for this presentation is I want to answer as many questions. I have Sean here with me. If the questions get too technical for me, I want to answer as many questions as you have, but primarily I want to introduce myself to you. My role as Vice President there of the company is to be your point of contact, yours and Ray's. The idea here is that one of the things I absolutely hated when I was in office was I walk into church, I'd walk into a grocery store, I walk into someplace and get lambasted for something, and I have to look at them and go, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't want that to happen for you. I'm your point of contact to see to it that you're very well aware. I'll either work directly with you. I love coffee. We can do that anytime you want, or through your city manager, but making sure that you have the information you need. But you'll also have my cell number, and so that if something comes up, if you have a constituent that has a question or a complaint, I don't care, if they have whatever, you now have me to reach out to directly. I deal with that 24/7 with folks from all over the state of California who have a question about what's going on, and we can get those things handled. And so sometimes, especially if they have already gone through the process on the phone, waiting to talk to somebody, everything else, and they're not getting satisfaction, and they get to you. If it rises to your level, I need to know about it and such. And so if you have any questions about what we're doing, I'll handle as much as I can tonight. If you want to get together at another time, I'm happy to come back up and do that. But that's what my purpose here primarily is to introduce myself. I'll go on to the next slide for now. There's 3 of those bullet points I want to point out. The first one here is what the fiber optic is. It's 100% fiber from our central office to the home. This is not one of those options where it's called fiber, but they bring it to the outside of the neighborhood, and from there it gets copper. Copper is the problem. It gets wet, it stops working. It's 140-year-old technology, and so we're replacing all of the copper, all the way to the side of the house and all the way to the business with full-on fiber optic capability. And so that's one of the distinctions of what this build is nationwide. One of the things I thought was really interesting is I saw a study a few weeks ago, read it, that said that the average, I didn't believe it, said the average household had 22 devices. I didn't believe it. And so at my house, it's my wife and I. So I started counting, and there were 3 computers at my desk, a computer at her desk, both of our phones, all of our TVs, and before I know it, I was up to 13 or 15 devices that are on my system, all begging for the same bandwidth and such. The problem with that is if you're on copper, is that the more you put on there, or the more people who around you in your neighborhood who are also on that same copper, it just slows everything down at bottlenecks. That will not happen with fiber. You can put as much as you want on there. The capacity is huge, especially, you go down to the fourth one. Is it the fourth one? Yeah, on the left-hand side. This is high speed, up to 2 gigs of service. When Verizon came to me when I was in office in Murrieta and asked to start this new thing called Fios, I think they were bragging about 200 up and down, 200 megs up and down and such. This is 2 gigs. They would say that a 200 megs was like the capacity of like a 10-foot culvert compared to a garden hose that would be your DSL. And such. I have no idea how big of a culvert 2 gigs would be, but it's a massive amount of capacity that's going to be brought to every citizen here in your city. So that's kind of where we are that's kind of the product that we're dealing with at this point. These maps right here, is the first one here. It kind of lays out where the build is. One of the things we're trying to stop is that to have Frontier come to your front desk and start pulling permits, but your team has no idea how big this project is until all the permits are coming in. We're trying to change that metric to where we work collaboratively with the team to accomplish that. And I will have to say, and Mr. City Manager, I'll say this publicly, your team has been stellar. I mean, we have a lot of cities we work with, but your team has been absolutely stellar. Not that they've given up the farm, they've worked with us. It's been very collaborative. And that's all I ask, is that we find ways to yes. And that's what's happened here, and that's why things are going so smoothly here for the build in Yucaipa. Right here, you see within the purple area there is, I believe that's the city boundaries and such, and it's about 4,600 addresses that we're passing by there. This map is going to show you where I believe it's the orange lines are where we already are. I believe that may have been the Verizon days when they put Fios in. The other lines there, the green lines there, are the new we're adding into, most of which is within the city limits. That's the new builds going on there. This is basically how it works. You've got, everything starts at the wire center here, and then from the wire center, it goes to what's called a hub that's usually outside a neighborhood, and we work with the city, with your staff, to find out where to put it, so it's as unobtrusive as possible to make it look good and so forth and so on. Outside that neighborhood, then as we move into the neighborhood with our fiber, it goes into these terminals, and these terminals have 4 to 8 per, and for the addresses, if you will, and such. And then when someone decides, I want to use this service, then they call us, make the order, and then we do what's called a fiber drop. And it goes from the terminal, and it's fiber all the way to the side of the house at that point. So when I say it's fiber from this wire center to the house, we absolutely mean that. There's a box on the side of the house or the business called ONT. Basically it's a translator. It goes from the fiber talking to whatever you have in your house. That takes it to, it could be copper, whatever it is. It takes it to your router, and then that space is so small, it does not affect your speeds at all. We have at this point, three as far as the market rate. At $49.99, it's 500 up and down. I've been working many years at 200 up and down, and so 500 up and down is awesome. But if you want a gig, it's $75 for that, and if you want 2 gigs, it's $150 for that. Let me explain what it is. It is internet service. We are divorcing ourselves from video. And the reason for that is that's what drives up the cost. And so in many cases, what we're finding, and I'm one of them, is that folks don't do that anymore. They stream. And so you'll have the basic, which is, you $50 a month. You'll have 500 up and down symmetrical speeds. But at the end of the day, if you want to have Disney Plus, you want to have HBO, you want to have the sports channels, you can add those apps to that, and you can watch those and stream them all you want. And you can control your costs. You're not having to worry about, okay, that $49.99 this year, yeah, but next year's $100. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all. It's just because we don't have those wild swings based on what we have to pay video providers. We don't do that. It's full-on internet capacity. I went through very quick. There's other stuff to talk about, but I wanted to start here with questions that you might have. And if you don't have any questions, then that's great as well. So any questions from the council?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Duncan, do you have any questions?
Well, I remember when Frontier came to Yucaipa, or at least the advertisement started coming about 4 or 5 years ago, and I guess you took over for someone else, and I got an ad, and I went ahead and I signed up for it, but then all my neighbors were complaining about it, so I canceled it right away. So I don't know, hopefully that's better service.
I was one of those, not your neighbors, but when I was at Verizon, and then Frontier decided, that version of Frontier decided that they didn't need this. So my team went away, and so I went back to my consulting at that point and such. But I had Verizon as my provider. Well, that turned into Frontier, and within 6 months, I'd killed it. I was getting double billed, and the service was not consistent and things like that. Those are the things that have been fixed. We have a new CEO, a new board, and so they're a whole different culture about how to do things. But then you add, you have copper on the one hand, but if you add the fiber to it, it's a whole lot more stable. It gets wet, it's still going to work. So very, very confident to say it's not that same discussion. I'm with you. I was there, but it's a different company now.
Well, I'm not complaining, I'm just stating the facts.
I was complaining, so I get it.
When do you anticipate the build-out will be complete?
Sean, do you know the answer to that?
We should be finishing up this portion right now around sometime early 2024 at the latest.
So it's a rather large build, and so we're in the process of that. But that's part of the discussion we have with staff, is to see to it that the impacts to your citizens through the process of that are as minimal as possible. And like I said, staff's been great about that to help us figure that out.
So for the recording's benefit, he said 2024, early 2024 is when you
Yes.
anticipate the build will be done?
Yeah.
What kind of impact will the residents see while you guys are doing this build?
It depends on the method of the build. If we have aerial in place, where it's copper now, we'll overlash onto existing aerial, and that's very easy, which is traffic control plans and such. If we have to bore, then it's much more intrusive at that point, and so we obviously there's a lot more that we work with on the staff as well as to see to it that's not a problem. But we're trying to be extremely communicative with your folks. 72 hours or so prior to is a door hanger that goes on the door. We put signs out, and anything else your staff asks us to do to communicate. We'd love it if you have a newsletter, we'll put stuff in your newsletter that goes to your folks. But whatever your staff asks us to do to communicate. But I will tell you what will happen. Most folks, many folks are like me when it comes to the door hangers. I go in through the garage. And so door hangers tend to populate themselves on my front door over time. And eventually I go out to the front door and I grab all the door hangers and throw them away, not even look at them. So there'll be people who will think we didn't talk to them. We didn't warn them ahead of time. They got up in the morning and there's this construction in their front yard on the streets and such, and they won't like that. And they're gonna call you. You let me know. And we'll have the team, we'll go out, we'll talk to them, we'll explain what's going on, and then we'll have our folks go back and re-notify everyone and such. It's very important to us that we don't ask for problems, so we try to communicate as much as we can.
Well, we have a reporter from the News Mirror present in the audience this evening, so I'm certain.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We have a reporter from the News Mirror in our audience this evening, so I'm certain what you're saying is being taken down and will be reported to our citizens.
And it is not unusual for us to end up with stories in the paper about this because it's pretty exciting what's happening. It's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
John, no questions. Actually, all my questions were asked, so I have nothing.
Except you need to be a mayor.
Yeah. Maybe where are you going to start when you start? Are you going to start closer to the freeway, or are you going to start maybe in the northeast?
Okay, you see right here on there's a reason for that question, right? Okay, I need to be careful how I answer that one. If you see on the northeast side of this, phase one is July, September of this year. So we're in the process now, and the permits, we're working on those as well. Phase two of this is down here on the southwest, and that's where you see the arrow pointing to. And then the last phase is going to be over here in October, December 2022. Now, that when I look at those dates, Sean, I question the 2024 completion. So there's more. Okay. So these are the first three phases. We'll be bringing to your staff the next phases after that, but that's the order of what we're doing now. And northeast is right there. So good.
Thank you. I have no other questions. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Use my number if you need it. Otherwise, you guys take care. Thanks for the time. Thanks, Ray.
All right, thank you very much. And we're moving on now to public comment. I have two slips here that speak on public comment. This is the time in which speakers can talk about anything that's not on the agenda for 3 minutes. And if you are wondering if you should speak, we do have some speaker slips over there on the table near the entrance of the chamber. And just fill it out, give it to Jennifer Crawford, and we'll give you your 3 minutes. So, but right now, we have first up, Robert Frost. Richard Frost, I'm sorry. I was reading poetry earlier today.
Supposedly I'm related to him, I don't know, but, so is this this is the timer, right?
Mayor Pro Tem will time you.
Richard Frost, 12731 3rd Street, Yucaipa. The block on Avenue E between 3rd and 4th, there's a lot of dogs running loose on that. You know, you might say the block's kind of going to the dogs or whatever, but I reported one dog one time that had injuries on his back, and they gave the owner a citation for that. But 2 weeks ago, last Sunday, it was really kind of serious. I was walking down there, and all of a sudden, this pit bull comes charging down the yard. I mean, I know not all pit bulls are violent or anything, but he stayed in the yard, but he was growling at me and everything like that, and I knew not to antagonize him, so I just walked away, and he just kind of disappeared. You know, I called animal control, and but what if it had been a small child or a small dog or something, you know, walking by? And I've seen that yard before. They have a lot of loose animals up there. It said, you know, you go down, it's on the north side of the street. It says beware of dog, and there's an apartment house here, and then there's a house there. And technically it's 34612 Avenue E, but you won't be able to find it because they hide their address number. So, and then I went back and I talked to some of the neighbors, and they said that pit bull occasionally gets loose and all that. But friendly or not, you know, that's kind of, but animal control did go out there. I think the police went out there too, but, you know, they, like I have 2 dogs, but they're not pit bulls. So, but with pit bulls, you never know what they're going to do usually, but, yeah. And that's the.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm sure Ray got the information, and he'll follow up on that. Okay, next is Alan O'Neill.
Well, hi, everybody, and I do have enough savoir-faire to say. City Council and Mayor, hi. I've been in Dunlap a long time. I live on 15th Street. I believe in Yucaipa immensely, but I have a problem with Dunlap Elementary School and the surroundings, so let me explain that. When I was little, I went to Dunlap Elementary School way back in like the 60s. John Branstead was the principal back there. Sticker vines and tumbleweeds were everywhere. On my street, I have taken a time and helped the neighbors clean up the street frontage so that the sticker weeds and tumbleweeds are gone until you turn on Avenue E between 12th Street and 13th Street, right in front of Dunlap Elementary School. Now, just because my grandkid happens to be going there on the 12th starting out, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. But when I look at other schools, how pretty it is all around, and then you look at Dunlap, let me explain that. On the north side of the street is a sidewalk, cement, concrete, and it's all perfect. They cemented one side of the street. If you look on the south side of Avenue E between 13th and 14th, I've already come in and identified myself with the secretary at Dunlap Elementary and said, I will be across the street scooping up tumbleweeds and sticker weeds. I call them sticker weeds, bullthorns, you know what I'm talking about, that would get in your shoes, your bicycle tires. And so when parents pull up here across the street to let their kids off, they're stepping out into the sticker vines, the bullhorn. So I picked up 3 barrels in my own car, took them to my house, put them in my green waste barrel, and I thought, why am I doing this? I called City of Yucaipa, and I'm sorry to say this. I explained the problem, and I said, other schools don't look this way. Why can't somebody come out and clean this up? 2 guys, shovels, a pickup truck, and I got the platitudes of the correct answer. Not our job, not our property. From this pavement to the fence of that San Bernardino County, we're gonna send out letters. Nothing's gonna happen. There's a pile of sticker weeds that I couldn't even get in my barrels, and it's right next to the guy's property. He had to pull out his own barrel, couldn't even pick it up. My challenge is maybe the city council would say to the city, can't somebody come out from Parks and Recreation, a couple guys with shovels and a pickup truck, and clean that up before the 12th? You have my phone number. If somebody said, could you come and see me? I would drive out immediately. If somebody said, would you come out and help shovel? I would do that immediately. And the mayor knows me well enough, and Bobby Duncan knows me well enough that that is the truth. I want Dunlap to look good. Sorry, guys.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, that's it for public comment. Jennifer, confirming there's no others? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I need to recuse myself from item 1. On the meeting, I wasn't able to make that.
Okay, very good. Duly noted. Are there any items any member wishes to pull for discussion? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second, and Councilmember Duncan is recusing himself from, or abstaining from item number 1. But if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Do you have any abstentions? I should have clarified that.
I abstain from item number 1 in the consent agenda.
Okay. Mayor and council member business, are there anything we wish to report? No activities? Very good. Moving on to item number 15, which is the fiscal year 2022-2023 Community Activity Grant in-kind requests. Before we start, I need to announce that I have to recuse myself from part of this, which involves the Chamber of Commerce. So we can go to, let's go to the Chamber first, and I'll recuse myself. Mayor Pro Tem, will you take over?
Is this Jennifer?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So there's 2 in-kind community activity grants before you this evening, and the one that Mayor Avila recused himself is there is a request from the Chamber of Commerce in the amount of $1,773 to waive rental fees for the Community Center Banquet Room and the Shear Senior Center to host a variety of events throughout the year.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
First and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Okay, where were we? Jennifer, you,
I'll
part
just
2?
proceed. So we've received 2 community activity grants for in-kind. The second grant before you this evening is a request from the Liberty Lab requesting $736.25 for in-kind support for rental fees at the Yucaipa Community Center Amphitheater and Shelter 2 to celebrate the 2nd anniversary of the Liberty Lab.
All right, any questions? None? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move approval.
We have a first and a second.
Yes.
If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations to both groups, I assume. Okay, possible action on pending legislation. Is there anything to report for pending legislation?
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and our contact is out this evening, so we'll light on that too. Okay, now we're going up to item number 17. Andrew Hamilton will present the annual investment policy update.
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, 16 is
Oh,
still
I'm
ahead
sorry,
of us.
16. 16, the Casablanca House Advisory Committee.
And I'll take that one if that's okay. So as council, I'm sure recalls, on June 13th, the council entered into a cost-sharing agreement with the property owner of the Casablanca property. This agreement also included a commitment relative to the adjacent Casablanca house and associated property. The Casablanca property is a development adjacent to the Casablanca house and the surrounding property associated with that. On July 11th, the City Council adopted a resolution establishing a Casablanca House Advisory Committee, and the purpose of the committee is to review improvements that are being proposed, pursue a fair share agreement for funding of those improvements, perhaps pursue grant funding, and work on the overall concept design for the area around the house as well. City Council approved the structure for that committee that incorporated a member from the Yucaipa Valley Historical Society, selected by those folks, one at-large representative, one property owner representative, and the City Council representative. The applicants have been notified, and the council may wish to hear from them this evening. I see Ms. Kanzler in the audience. I don't know if is Ms. Geyer in the office? Oh, yeah, over there, I'm sorry, I didn't see you back there. So they're both here. If you so choose, you may hear from them as well about their participation. That's staff's report.
All right, thank you. Any questions of staff? Would anybody like to hear our applicant speak? No? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the recommendations of staff?
So moved.
You have a motion to approve?
I'll second.
First and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Ayes carry it. Thank you very much, and congratulations to the applicants.
And then would the council be interested in selecting a council member for this committee as well from your
let's do
membership?
that. Okay. Does anyone, I'm interested, but if there's anybody else interested,
How long is this going to go on, do you think?
My best guess, and this is a smaller committee, which makes it a little bit more tenable than some of the committees we've had in the past, but my best guess is 6 months to a year. 6 months is probably a better guess.
Are you going to run for reelection? Are you going to be around then? Or?
I'm not going to be around. I'm not running for reelection.
Well, that's none of my business, but I'm just trying, I'd like to be on that if Mayor Avila's not going to be on there, but he can do it if he wants to. I don't.
Is there an opportunity to appoint and then a second so that?
Sure, an alternate, sure.
An alternate so that should your term
I'll accept
When
expire?
it does expire.
Yeah, when it expires.
And then you want to do it after that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we can split it up. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
So I'll make a motion that Mayor Avila is appointed to the committee with Councilman Duncan as the alternate.
I'll second that.
With direction to come back and establish that structure. Okay.
All right. We have first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, now we move on to number 17, correct?
Correct,
Andrew
Mr. Mayor.
Hamilton, Annual Investment Policy Update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Before you tonight is the annual investment policy update and the annual delegation authorization proposed by staff. Just briefly, the substantive changes relate to removing two types of investments. While they are legal, they're authorized by the California Government Code, they're just less conservative compared to other investments. So these recommended revisions, all the recommended revisions were reviewed by the city attorney and PFM, the city's investment manager, And with that, you can see the two recommendations to approve the annual investment policy and delegate authority to the city treasurer for 1 year. That concludes my presentation, if there's any questions.
All right. Any questions of staff? All right. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda item?
I'll move. I'll second.
We have first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Okay, moving on to item number 18. Jennifer Crawford will present the we're pushing that forward. Okay. Number 19, Ben Matlock, first extension and contract amendments.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Before you is an extension and contracts for the environmental services related to our on-call consultants. As the City Council is aware, this is to help facilitate the California Environmental Quality Act review process. All discretionary actions that the city does or any public agency takes forward is subject to CEQA. This includes any actions by a City Council and the Planning Commission and may include public projects such as our capital improvement projects as well as private development projects. And ultimately, the process is to provide transparency to the decision-making process, making the public and the decision makers aware of those of the impacts of a project. The CEQA process is a pretty significant one. It is a quite involved process. Fundamentally, it's just determining, what the level of review is, and then, essentially developing an appropriate CEQA document to help support the process. As part of the overall, if a project is subject to CEQA and let's say requires the preparation of an MND or EIR, has 21 different individual topics with several different questions within it, and all require kind of analysis or substantial evidence in light of the record to try and create the conclusion. So as part of doing the environmental review for any project requires a technical speak of showing your own work as you develop that stuff. And so with the complexity of those projects and the 21 different topics and the number of questions within it, it's a highly involved process and does take quite a bit of time to prepare this. And so the city has the on-call consultants that help specialize or provide staff that specialize in a variety of different specialized fields of study, including traffic engineers, geotechnical engineers, biologists, air quality and noise modelers, and others. And so it really helps us facilitate the different projects that we have, including the public works projects and private development projects. Now, as I noted, the on-call consultants really are specialized as in the environmental realm, and so they are part of the environmental review team that is a own distinct area of planning and development. And so they deal with the state law and federal law requirements for different technical studies on a daily basis. In 2020, the City Council did approve the on-call agreements to support the city's environmental review process and is then proposed to be continued in tonight's action. This does help us complete the required review for any of the projects that we have and ensure compliance with all the procedural elements and the complexity that is the environmental review process. It then also helps kind of the long-term stage of these projects too, including the mitigation support on our public works projects, as well as obtaining the resource agency permits that is part of being able to get the shovel in the ground for our capital improvement projects. And then as a part of it also does support the timely review of these efforts by focusing on completing the process, having a full team that's dedicated to help with this project rather than just city staff alone. And I do want to note, as part of the effort, the on-call consultants do provide a tremendous benefit to the city staff. Based on the development services update that was prepared and provided several meetings ago, we have been busy as a department on all fronts. We have a number of different critical projects that are in process, including those that are listed on the slide for the capital improvement projects that do require environmental review elements to be completed for your guys' decision, as well as a number of other large advanced planning projects, including the city's housing element update process, the wine country specific plan, the freeway corridor specific plan, all of which require CEQA efforts to be done. And then as part of the development services update, we've also noted that the planning department, in terms of private development projects, has had the 4th highest level of applications since incorporation, the highest in over a decade. And so all these projects require CEQA review. And as part of a number of the private development projects, we do have quite a few that are a little bit more complicated or contentious in their nature, and so do require a bit more thorough of analysis to make sure that the city is protected in terms of its review process and ultimately, in providing the integrity to the approval process for these different projects. Now, as part of the 2020 agreement, there was opportunities to use these on-call consultants in addition to the city's projects, but as well as private development. And staff does seek formal direction on the process and utilization of these resources for private development review in terms of balancing the staff resources that we have in City Hall, as well as the consultant support that specializes in this field. And additionally, I do want to note, as part of a survey of other cities, all the cities surrounding us do utilize environmental professional consultants for their project reviews as well, given that it's a specialized field of planning. So they use these teams for both their public and private development review projects. And happy to answer any questions, and Fermin is also here. And
All right, any questions of staff?
So this is the first extension of the agreements that we had, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
that's right.
So this company here, does Charles Abbott have these services available?
Charles Abbott does more, I think, on the environment or on the engineering and building permit side. They don't necessarily have a strong environmental planning sector in terms of their services. It's usually firms that either are large engineering firms that I had previously worked in, or firms that specialize in urban planning and environmental review, and they're their own kind of unique niche of the industry.
So they don't have a strong department. Do they do these services? Does Charles Abbott do these services?
No, the only environmental services they provide is for the stormwater pollution program, but not these specific services.
How long is this contract for? How many extensions do they have on this contract? This is first extension. How many more?
2 more years. And then we'll go back out for an RFP again.
So there's 3 altogether, 3 possible extensions? This one and 2 more?
Okay, so it's the 2-year contract that's already been approved, and then additional 2 years. And so a total contract of 4 years before we go back out for the professional services.
Yeah. So the proposed amendment before you is for the second 2-year term for 2 fiscal years.
Do you have any questions, Councilman Thorpe?
Is there a time that we might look at bringing this back in-house, or is this the way we want to try to continue to operate beyond this 4-year contract?
I think it is a discussion why we're seeking direction tonight, at least for the review. Certainly, no matter what level of project there is, certain technical studies are going to be required, and the qualifications for certain studies is, you have to meet certain requirements. So let's say a biologist, us as city staff, doesn't have, the federal clearances to do that evaluation. And so some degree of professional support is required. As noted, most cities do have their on-call consultants, so they've already gone through the formal review and review of qualifications for that process. And then by having an on-call setup, it allows a bit more of a timely process. So rather than doing a RFQ for each individual project, you already have gone through that effort, and then you get proposals for individual projects. And then if it's a private development project, they can review that scope, ask questions, perhaps refine it if necessary based on information, and then from there, complete the review process.
By sending it out, you may have already answered this in your statement, but by sending it out, does it cause a bit of a longer response time versus if it was in-house and you weren't working on your special other projects that you're working on? But I mean, so if a developer comes in, your typical turnaround on a developer's project versus using on-call services, are they going to expect a delay or?
Typically, it ends up being a little bit quicker, depending on the project management. Let's say, hypothetically, you're waiting for a developer. They're going to be doing some stuff. We're going to facilitate most of it in-house, but they're going to provide studies. You don't have then the project management control over when those studies come in and that timeline of review. And so as the city being responsible for that contract, we can push those consultants to make sure that they're meeting the schedule that we expect of them, and have a little bit more control over the quality assurance and quality control of that process.
And then one last question, if it's going out to on-call services, is there going to be a higher fee to a developer versus if it was in-house, or is it the same price?
So ultimately, the effort is kind of based on, kind of that time and materials purpose. Sometimes the environmental consultants, because it is a professional team that specializes in it, may be a little bit more pricey than city staff doing it. We do know kind of a 30% kind of overhead in terms of that professional staff. Part of it just comes down to time, as if they're able to get it done quicker. Whether or not that cost factor is something that justifies that more expedient review as well.
And if I can add to that, we have noticed that there's usually a 25 to 35% cost, or it costs more to have the on-call consultants review these. And as Ben mentioned, it's due to their qualifications and their expertise based on each specialty that they're reviewing. And then also to further add, moving forward based on the level of CIP projects, or at least the CIP projects that are in environmental review, and even the planning applications that are received, we may adjust that, or at least come back to council and maybe consider completing more of that effort in-house. But right now, as Ben mentioned, based on the level of applications, the number of applications that we've been receiving, we're seeking that formal direction from council.
Does that 25% higher increase, does that cause developers or private projects to not go through because of that higher increase? Do we have a level of people that decide not to do it because we're not doing it in-house?
I'm not aware of that. As I noted, most other cities follow the same process. Ultimately, it comes down to the efficiency of review. By having a full team that can do these projects can usually move along quicker. The second part is, the CEQA review process tends to be, if someone wants to try to stop a project, that's the first spot that they go to, just because of how complex it is. And so when you have a team that they focus day in and day out of those requirements, they're able to provide a little bit more of a defensible document, a little bit more thorough analysis based on these, particular challenges or lawsuits that have come into play. And so it may be a little bit more expensive on the front end, but if it's dealing with, let's say, a CEQA-based lawsuit where someone's trying to, either challenge a project or try to leverage that to receive some attorney's fees or something like that, it provides a little bit more defensibility on that process. And so it may be a little bit more expensive on the front end, but saves on the back end as well.
Thank you.
Obviously there's some concerns expressed here. What is the current workload for these reviews? And how can we, or if you can, project what the workload would be in the future? And I ask this given that maybe having staff hiring staff rather than go out, the cost effectiveness. So let's start with workload.
So typically, when it comes to the preparation of the environmental review document, so absent technical studies that go along with it, that can be between 60 to over 100 hours depending on the project, just for a smaller scale initial study, M&D. If you're looking, we, as an approach, have always taken out environmental impact reports to professional staff, just because those can be very lengthy and certainly have a lot more procedural elements that go into meeting state law requirements on that. So usually that's something that can be even more timely and time intensive for staff to complete.
Do we have a lot of projects that are coming in that requires environmental review, or is it just once every couple of weeks? How is that? That's what I meant by workload. How busy would they be?
We have, so all discretionary projects are subject to CEQA. Most of them fall within exemption, but I think we have probably at least 15 that are subject to the preparation of initial study and M&D or greater.
And that's on your desk right now, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe another metric is as a result of that recent study that was done in the department or the division. Our activity level this year is somewhere around I think it's the 4th highest it's been in our history in planning. And then on top of that, you've got those 3 large initiatives, actually 4 if you count the interchange, the housing element, the freeway corridor specific plan, the wine country specific plan, and then the Wildwood interchange. And so, as Fermín mentioned, we'd like to come back to you. We see some of that activity level subsiding, over the next 6 to 8 months, and have you weigh in again in terms of the level of effort done by environmental consultants as opposed to staff. Ben does a great job, and he's training staff on this in this area. But right now, something will have to give, and unfortunately, it's the timing on private development, or it's the private timing on these initiatives that are so important to the community. So our recommendation is to continue with the environmental consultant, but we wanted to make sure that we took this opportunity to have this discussion.
And I agree. I know in larger communities that I've worked in, they have staff that just do that. But smaller communities such as ours and with budgets such as ours, we tend to go out. And while it does cost a little bit more, as Ben mentioned on the front end, it saves the applicant a lot on the back end overall. And maybe when we have more money to know what to do with, we can hire all the staff we want. But until then, we have to utilize contract services.
And I do want to note, as part of the survey, I reached out to a number of surrounding jurisdictions, even larger ones such as the City of Ontario and, in Upland, some of that, and they all utilize the on-call environmental professional services, just given the complexity and time-intensive nature of this review to help facilitate kind of the timely processing of their public and private development projects.
And all your recommendations are doing satisfactory? We're not having too many glitches or hiccups with the on-call consultants that we have now?
They have been fantastic to work with on both the public and some of the private development projects that have used them. We have also successfully, for certain projects where, let's say an applicant has their own professional team that they like to use, where we've had the peer review of the studies done by our on-call consultant staff, and that helped kind of refine some of the analysis to help provide a much smoother process through the public hearing review process for those projects too.
All right, thank you very much. All right, gentlemen. What say ye?
I
Yeah.
move approval on item number 19's recommendations 1 through 5.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I don't mind doing a second, but when will we come back and revisit this?
Ray?
6 months?
Okay, I could do that.
Okay, we have first and a second. I do have some discussion. What is your thought on this?
I think I have heard a while back that there was maybe a little bit of delay in some things going through, and so I'm just concerned about once the projects that they're working on, they get those squared away, that we try to bring some of that back in-house if we can. I understand why we're using the other team, but if we can bring some of it back in and maybe there's a quicker turnaround on some other projects. I don't know, and I may be out on a limb on this, but that's just my initial thought.
Okay, duly noted. And that's a concern that we all have, I think, is make sure that we get timely return and try to reduce the expense to our applicants. Bob, any further?
Well, I was just going to say, you're never out on a limb if you're questioning something.
Yeah,
Good
that's true.
question, absolutely.
We need to talk about that. All right, we have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposition? The ayes carry. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 20, Megan Wolf with their 2022 Yucaipa Music and Arts Festival update.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Staff is recommending that City Council receive and file the 2022 Yucaipa Music and Arts Festival wrap-up report. On May 6th from 6 to 10 p.m. and Saturday, May 7th from 12 to 10 p.m., the 10th Annual Yucaipa Music and Arts Festival was held in the Uptown. The Chamber of Commerce managed food and merchandise vendors. Deborah Henderson managed the flower show. The Knights of Columbus managed the beer and wine garden. Vision Quest managed art displays and vendors. Gem and Mineral Society managed the Gem and Mineral Show. And Rotary Club of Yucaipa managed the parking lot of the YPAC, which was closed for artists and staff and volunteers. In an effort to make additional revenue to offset the rising costs of these special events and events held at the YPAC, staff is looking into offering a paid parking option for future events and concerts held at the YPAC. City staff was responsible for the marketing, which included social media, vendor applications, vendor signage, vendor maps, traffic control. And the city also supplied the tents in the middle of the street in an effort to keep the storefronts open for people to visit the storefronts. The city provided electricity, lighting, and a vendor parking area. In addition, the city provided the Kid Zone, which was the most successful, bringing in $12,940. The goal of the Music and Arts Festival is to bring people to the city of Yucaipa, in particular to the Uptown. The way that we accomplish this goal is we search for and solidify headline entertainment. On Friday night, the entertainment was a Foo Fighters tribute band known as Foo's Fighters and a Pearl Jam tribute band known as the 10 Band. Both of the bands were well received, but in particular, the 10 Band, we have received comments that the community and those that were at the event would like to see them again. On Saturday, the opening was the San Bernardino Teen Workshop band known as Soul Point. And then we had the winner of America's Got Talent Season 14, Cody Lee. And the night ended with that headliner, and it was Playing White Tees. A total of 269 VIP tickets were sold, which equaled $6,725. In addition to the main stage, there was entertainment from local bands on California Street stage. Staff secured sponsorships also to help offset the cost of the event. Fortunately, we were able to lean on our relationship with Sorensen Engineering, and the sponsorship was in the amount of $5,000. I would like to note that staff does need to focus more on sponsorships, and it has become evident that the key to sponsorships is relationships, and that takes a little bit more time. And so we'd like to focus a little bit more on building relationships and creating marketing opportunities for businesses. And in order to do that, we think that we need to supply one staff that is focused on that for all city events and city marketing opportunities. As an overall, the event exceeded staff and community expectations for attendance and interest from vendors. Staff has facilitated several wrap-up meetings and surveys, and the result was that the event delivered a quality community activity and provided great exposure for the city. Actual revenues received was $57,676, and actual expenses was $139,783, for a net expense to the city in the amount of $82,111, which was $2,033 less than anticipated. This concludes my report. However, I do have a video I'd love to show you. I know we've had a lot of events and a lot of things happen since May 6th and 7th, and I'd just like to remind everyone of what an amazing event this was. concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
No, I think it was very good.
It was a fun time. Everyone had a great time. Good presentation. Thank you, Megan. We'll go ahead and receive and file that. And now we'll go ahead and move on to item number 21, award of contract Wilson 3 Basin Phase 1C Charles improvements.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and members of council. Thank you. This report is for the construction of the Phase 1C of the Wilson 3 Basin project. I'll start off with a little overview of the project and what's been completed to date, starting with our overall Oak Glen Creek specific plan area, which incorporates the Wilson 3 Basin project itself, the channel realignment, the residential sites, and the innovation sites, including the city yard relocation, which is also underway. And jumping right into our Wilson 3 Basin Phase 1A project, which was completed in September of 2021, which consisted of the mass grading of the basin and the channel realignment, and that relocation of material on site to balance it for the residential tracts and the innovation areas, along with generation during that process of the rock that was used for the Phase 1B, which is currently underway and substantially complete, primarily consisting of the channel protection, primarily riprap, as well as some drainage improvements and fencing along the boundary there with our access road and the church property, which leads us to the proposed Phase 1C, the next phase of construction that is being recommended with this item tonight. So on the screen before you, you see the areas in red that highlight two of the large drainage structures that were included with the bid package for this contract. The first being the structure located near Oak Glen Road at Wilson Creek, which is basically an extension of that box culvert that exists to tie into the channel improvements there, as well as the large structures where Oak Glen Creek enters into the Wilson Creek Basin, where they converge and drop down into the main basin itself. Those areas in yellow that you see on the screen here are areas that are no longer actively under construction, so the recommendation is to go ahead and move forward with erosion control measures and apply soil binder to minimize the erosion that may take place over time and reduce the dust control for the next 6 months to a year during this next phase of construction. And this proposed phase of improvements with the bid package also included significant amount of trail fencing along the trails that are being constructed with these improvements, much of which is covered with grant funding. This next slide here is an aerial drone photo of a section where Oak Glen Creek enters into Wilson Creek. This was taken just after some significant storm events. And as you can see in the middle part of the screen here, there was a significant amount of erosion after only just a couple large storm events. And without this large drainage structure in place, you can see how critical it is to get these improvements in before the upcoming storm season and to protect the work that's been taking place as we approach this area with the channel. This next slide shows you a more detailed view. On the bottom is the plan view from above of the Oak Glen Creek Basin, the transition structure going into a double box culvert, and then finally an impact basin which reduces the velocities before it enters into the Wilson Creek and drops down into the channel. So this gives you an idea of the size and the magnitude of this one of the structures that is incorporated into this construction contract. And then finally, showing once again the remaining phases that will be constructed at a later date, highlighting here some work left to be done in the basin, including the construction of the lake, as well as the downstream components and that spillway section, as that these two phases of work tie in to continue those flows downstream. I've included on here also this box at Oak Glen Road to be constructed at a later date, and I'll just get into that here in a moment. This shows a section of the channel as it was completed with Phase 1A, and then a more recent photo taken earlier this year showing some of the channel improvements that have gone in. And once again, this is the Wilson Creek impact basin that was advertised with this bid package. And then that Oakland Creek enters into the Wilson Creek down at this area where that other larger structure transitions into Wilson Creek Basin. Here before you is a summary of the proposed, or the funding that's approved with the capital improvement program. A couple highlights here. The community project funding and congressionally directed spending in the amount of $1 million has been tentatively approved, and the formal approval is still pending on that particular item. And with respect to the state revolving loan that's shown in the CIP, that particular funding source is still under review by the state, and we are hearing that we're hopefully going to get word back on that funding and that loan opportunity this fall or early winter. With the available funding that's shown, as well as the overall project cost to date, staff is recommending that the award of this contract move forward based on the competitive bid process. We were advertised the bid package in June, and on July 14th, we received 6 bids, for which the lowest responsible bidder was Borden Excavating out of Calamasa, California. Due to the funding and the cash available at this time with the overall project cost to date, staff is recommending that we remove the bid item for the Wilson Creek impact basin closer to Oakland Road. With the improvements in place that were completed with this current Phase 1B, the cutoff wall and the channel improvements, there really is not a significant risk for losing any of those improvements that were recently constructed. In the Oakland Creek Basin and those structures with only a small interim drainage system in place, we feel that's a much more critical item to focus on, and so that is why this table before you and the report recommends moving forward with the award of the contract to the lowest responsible bidder, Borden Excavating, and then subsequently moving forward with a change order number 1 to remove the Wilson Creek impact basin from the contract. And if approved, that impact basin would be constructed at a later date with the next phase of improvements. The recommendations with this proposal also include incorporation of a contract contingency in the amount of $400,000, construction contract administration in the amount of $75,000, as well as construction management services, material testing, survey, and staff time in the amount of $200,000 for a total proposed construction budget in the amount of $5,350,000. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions of staff?
I have a question on item 2, the recommendation. What is the deductive amount? I tried to find that, and I'm not sure I understood that.
Good question. So the contract, the bids came in with all of the bid items incorporated with that contract. One of the bid items was I'll show you on the screen here before you. One of the bid items was for the construction of the structure that ties in the existing box culvert to the cutoff wall and the channel improvements here, what we're calling the Wilson Creek Impact Basin. So the proposed change order number 1 in the amount of $1,420,000 is to deduct that entire bid item from the contract. So with this recommendation, the contract would move forward to construct primarily the drainage structures that are shown on this slide here as where Oakland Creek enters into Wilson Creek. And then there is a significant amount of additional riprap and channel protection measures that are incorporated into this contract to transition down into the main basin itself. The deductive change order is to deduct or remove the bid item for the structure closer to Oakland Road at this time and defer that to a later date.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? No other questions? And refresh my memory, how many acre feet will that lake hold?
The lake itself is 5 acres, and it's about 15 feet deep. I'm blanking on the amount of acre feet that the lake holds. 45 acre feet is the lake itself, permanent storage.
That's pretty good. I mean, and that reflects that flood that we had last year.
The
Hold back a lot
significant
of-
storm event
Yeah.
that showed some of that damage, all of that was contained in the basin itself. We had an interim spillway to go downstream, and all of that was contained and is infiltrated and some evaporated.
This is a phenomenal project. Okay, so this is also a vote. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry. All right, moving on to item number 22, Ben Matlock again, Yucaipa Freeway Corridor Specific Plan Update.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Before you is Amendment Number 1 to the Police Works contract related to the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan's subsequent environmental impact report. As the council is aware, the subsequent environmental impact report is set up as a programmatic level EIR, so it's covering the update to the specific plan and those policies thereof. However, as part of the project, we are also completing a more detailed review for the actual projects that have been submitted and are in the pipeline within the project. So we're covering kind of 2 birds with 1 stone. One is the big umbrella for the update, as well as the projects that have been submitted in the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan. The initial budget that was provided with the original contract was to provide the initial task for that programmatic level document, as well as setting the establishment or requirement for an MOU cost share agreement between the developers that are in process within the specific plan area. And so, as council may recall, a $500,000 contribution has been made in that effort for the project that's within the pipeline. As the transition from that programmatic level to project level elements does require some additional technical studies, as well as a little bit more thorough review, including a little bit more thorough detail on the biological review, a health risk assessment, and some additional traffic modeling to cover that project level analysis. Additionally, when we did the study session on the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan update, the level of service or the intersection capacity around the specific plan was certainly identified as a priority for review under City Council. And while level of service isn't necessarily a CEQA-related threshold, it does provide information for that decision-making process on how the intersections will support the development. And so that is part of additional efforts for the environmental review. And so with that, the agreement would provide a total budget for place works in the amount of $691,000. I do want to note items 2 and 3 reflect more the budget accounting for the overall effort, with which includes $400,000 that was already budgeted for the environmental review effort, the total cost of the effort, and then as well as reconciling the $500,000 that was already submitted. I do want to note, as well as part of future project approvals, these developments will be required to reimburse the city for this program at level review. So we are doing the heavy lifting to get the specific plan approved and to create the environmental review document for those projects. And then as they come online, they will then reimburse the city for those efforts. And so I do want to note a revision to recommendation number 2 is also to help clarify that this element, should a specific project, the budget transfer being made to Fund 35, once a future reimbursement agreement is made, then it would essentially reconcile that budget transfer. And so happy to answer any questions. I think Andrew can provide some detail on the language for that accounting process, but yeah, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
This is for the environmental impact, right? The report. This is not for the way that it's zoned, is it?
It is, no, it's for the proposed Freeway Corridor Specific Plan update and covers the analysis for what is going to be proposed and what's been reviewed as part of a prior study session.
Is this what we looked at EDAC? When you came to EDAC, is that the layout that we're talking about here?
So far, the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan land uses are consistent with what council has reviewed in the study session process, yes.
Is that what we're approving with this?
If you approve it this evening, you're approving an amendment to the contract for the environmental elements of that, the update on the traffic study, update on some of the biological studies. So you'd be approving an update on those contracts and those costs, subject to reimbursement as projects go through the process.
I see. Thank you.
Questions? Question?
No, sir.
Okay. If no further discussion on this, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
You have a first and a second. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Okay, I'd like to adjourn the city council meeting and ask Mr. Duncan to open up the housing authority.
I'll go ahead and open up the Housing Authority at this time, and I'm trying to find it on this iPad, and I'm struggling big time. We have one item on there, that's the minutes from our last meeting, is that correct?
That's the first item, and then there will be a joint item after that.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and ask for,
Move to approve?
okay, good. If I had my paper, I could figure this out, but I'm struggling. I
I'll
got a
make the
first,
motion. I'll make the motion.
I got a first and a second? First and a second, so any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes 4-0.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and reconvene the city council. And we'll call up the presenters for item number 23.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce Ryan Miller, our Economic Development and Housing Analyst, to give this staff report this evening. Ryan's been working very hard on a number of fronts at the same time, including this project, and so I wanted to give him the opportunity to present this to you this evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members and Housing Authority. I got a slide up here. Fantastic. For your consideration this evening is adopting a resolution declaring that a city-owned parcel located at the southeast corner of Oak Glen Road and Avenue E as exempt surplus land and not necessary for city use. In addition, approve an exclusive negotiating agreement with Eagle Development to develop the site with approximately 150 to 200 units of 100% workforce affordable rental housing. Disposing of the property will assist the city in meeting its obligations to provide affordable housing in the city, and this project will align with state policies related to the current housing crisis and arguably is consistent with the declaration of the surplus land statutes that a decent home and suitable living environment for every Californian is a priority of the highest order. Further, the legislature has declared that a shortage of sites available for housing for persons and families of low and moderate income is a barrier to addressing urgent statewide housing needs, and that surplus government land prior to the disposition should be made available for that purpose. City staff believes that the disposition of the property for a 100% housing workforce project is consistent with these policies. The exclusive negotiating agreement with Eagle Development will serve as the framework and under which the city and Eagle will negotiate a development and disposition agreement, and which that will govern the development of the actual site. The exclusive negotiating agreement also affirms that the city will not negotiate with any other developers for the development of the site during the agreement's duration. Eagle Development agrees that prior to marketing the project to the general public, the developer shall conduct an initial marketing study campaign of a 2-week duration, and that's directed at residents of the city of Yucaipa, individuals who work in the city of Yucaipa, households in which one adult member has a disability that prevents them from working, and essential workers who live in the San Bernardino County. During such individuals will be given preference in the rental of those units, all of them. This workforce group also includes our local teachers, firefighters, police officers, first responders, frontline manufacturing workers, and the hardworking citizens of Yucaipa who will have preference in renting these units. This project provides a direct benefit to the Yucaipa community in increasing the availability of quality residential family-oriented housing in the city. Increasingly, there is a greater percentage of workforce living outside the general area of which they work, resulting in longer commute times, congested roadways, and uncertainty of housing opportunities near prospective employers. For example, Sorenson Engineering, a Yucaipa-based manufacturing company, employs over 500 individuals. They've affirmed that the percentage of their employees living in Yucaipa has decreased to around 35% with their recent expansion efforts. Based on discussions with Sorenson staff, key factors in this declining percentage are the availability and cost of housing in Yucaipa. So once the development and disposition agreement is negotiated, staff will return to City Council and the Housing Authority for approval. And I do appreciate, this is the end of my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you have, staff.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions of staff?
These are market rate, right? Market rate apartments that we're talking about?
If I may, these apartments will be similar to the senior housing apartments, that project that council had approved previously at Fifth and County Line. These will be family projects, as they are targeting first-time police, first-time fire, first-time teachers, first-time manufacturing workers at Sorenson. That's the purpose of that 2-week, which is very unique, by the way, that Eagle has agreed to that 2-week preferenced sign-up with those categories ahead of allowing for others to sign up for the apartments. But their income strata for the Fifth and County Line project was something like 70-75%, basically market rate, 25% other. And so that would be a similar income strata here, all of which would qualify as affordable housing because of our rental rates. But it's a similar income stratum as was approved at Fifth and County Line. It's just going from 68% Yucaipa residents at Sorenson, whatever it was, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, to 35% Yucaipa residents. We just felt like, and Eagle agreed, and Sorenson is excited about the opportunity to have their staff and others that I talked about sign up in that first 2 weeks when this project moves forward. So,
All right. Okay, here, a question here. The preference you indicated would be to basically our public service or public safety employees. And Sorenson's on board with that because maybe they might have a big number that might compete with, the preferences for public safety personnel first. Is there going to be is there enough room to accommodate everybody?
so if I don't mind, this project is conceptually designed to provide somewhere between 150 and 200 units. Somewhere in the middle of that range is probably where we end up. The 2-week preferential sign-up includes disabled folks, which we've got to include. It includes Yucaipa residents. It includes Yucaipa workers that live elsewhere. And it includes the federal essential worker definition, which is manufacturers, teachers, police officers, fire officers, government employees, everything that falls under the definition of the federal definition of essential workers, which is all of those.
So Sorenson's engineering is included?
Correct.
Because they're manufacturers?
Correct.
And in theory, they're also working in Yucaipa, but they may not living in Yucaipa, so they're covered under that 2-week
Trying to bring
umbrella.
them back.
Both ways, that's right.
I just want to make sure that we get.
And didn't we approve a location right down the street going toward the 10 freeway for low-income housing with the state of California about 7, 8 years ago?
So again, what the housing element includes is density levels that would qualify based on ACD requirements. And the previous housing cycle had locations in the freeway corridor, on the south side of the freeway primarily. It had a site, as you suggested, along Oakland Road. The current housing element, draft housing element that you have supported to date also includes those same sites with some modifications on the south side of the freeway. But yes, it does include a site on Oakland Road as well.
And we had previously approved that, and that's where we wanted those to go.
That's correct. And again, that's a density, that's not a income level. That project could come in at some point, all market rate, but at a density that would be allowed by HCD, for example.
Okay, if no further questions, thank you, Ryan. Do I hear a motion?
I'll approve this item.
The motion to approve?
A second.
First and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
And then we need, Housing Authority, we also need to take a
On
vote
behalf
on
of the
this?
Housing Authority, I'd like to go ahead and have a motion to approve this as well.
I'll second.
Yeah, first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and close the Housing Authority at this time.
Thank you. Go ahead and move on now to public hearings. We'll open up the public hearing for item number 24, case number 22-063, City of Yucaipa General Plan Housing Element Update, continued from 7-11.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Certainly a timely topic based on the prior thing. City staff does request further continuance to continue to work on the housing element. I do want to note we had submitted the draft of the housing element to the HCD and received some preliminary feedback. We've been trying to work through that feedback. We have gone through a punch list of all of those things, have reached, I think, a good spot in terms of some minor edits that are needed. And so once we've completed those efforts, we will be bringing the housing element back for adoption and hopefully concurrent certification with the state and be done with the housing element process. So
Okay, and your recommendation?
is to continue to the next city council meeting.
Okay, just to be sure.
Have we already voted on that?
I move to continue the public hearing for case number 22-063/GPA for the city, to the city council meeting of August 22nd, 2022.
First, do you hear a second?
I'll second.
We have first and second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry it. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 25. We'll open up the public hearing. I'm sorry, we officially closed the public hearing for item number 24. We'll open up. Oh, we can keep.
Actually, we purposefully left that open because it will be continued at the
Oh,
next
I'm
meeting.
sorry.
We're good.
Here we go. I'll learn. We'll open up the public hearing for item number 25, adoption of resolution number 2022-12. Speaker will be from
I
me?
will be presenting that item, Mr. Mayor, yes. Good evening. This item is for consideration of a resolution of necessity for the acquisition of a property required to construct the Avenue E Intersections Improvement Project. As council is aware, the overall project includes the phased construction of roundabouts along Avenue E between Bryant Street and 5th Street. Single-lane roundabouts at 2nd and 3rd have been completed. The dual-lane roundabouts at Bryant, 4th and 5th Street intersections are next. The roundabouts will replace the four-way stop intersections and allow Avenue E to remain 2 lanes instead of 4 in the ultimate build-out condition. And as you've heard before, the 2-lane configuration of Avenue E at build-out will ultimately save in construction costs and also impacts to the residential properties, along Avenue E. The next phase of the project includes the construction of the roundabouts at 4th Street and also at 5th Street. For these 2 intersections, a total of 11 permanent right-of-way easements are required for this phase. 10 of those easements have already been acquired by the city and approved by City Council. This item before you relates to the 11th easement that is required, and it is a full property acquisition. The property is located on 5th Street, just north of the intersection of Avenue E. There is a single-family residential structure on the property currently. Just to provide some background, in July of 2021, the city did hire a real estate appraiser to determine the fair market value of the property, and a real estate appraisal was completed. City Council reviewed and approved that appraisal and sent it to the property owner, and staff sent the property owner an offer to purchase. Following that, the property owner did not accept that first offer. The city then suggested the property owner obtain an independent appraisal, and in March of this year, the property owner submitted an independent appraisal to the city. City Council did review and approve that independent appraisal, and staff sent a new offer to purchase a property owner in May of this year. The property owner has rejected the city's offer, and they they indicate that they believe that the value of the property has increased again over the last several months. They have provided the city with another appraisal more recently. The city is authorized to acquire this property interest for street improvements for public and use pursuant to the California Government Code. The public hearing on the resolution of necessity tonight relates only to issues A, B, C, and D as listed in the agenda report. Issue A is the public interest and necessity require the project. B is that the project is planned or located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. C, the subject property interests described in the resolution of necessity are necessary for the project. And D, the city has made the offer required by Government Code Section 7267.2 to the record owner of the subject property. The amounts or the value of just compensation for the subject property interests are not an issue for consideration at this public hearing. The description of the property interests are provided on pages 397 and 398 of the agenda. Staff is recommending that City Council conduct a public hearing and consider recommendations 1 through 4 as written in the agenda report for this item. Staff did receive correspondence from the property owner indicating that they would be attending tonight's meeting, and they were asking to be heard tonight. And I also want to point out the resolution of necessity does require a 4/5 vote of the entire City Council, and with only 4 members in attendance, a unanimous vote would be required to adopt the resolution of necessity. That concludes my report, and staff is available for questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of staff?
So we've talked about this quite a bit. So the property owner understands, obviously, that the city is going to take the property and give them whatever price that the appraisal says it's worth, right?
Yes, we've shared
I'm
that
sure
with the
they
property
do,
owner.
but it just breaks my heart to have to do this, but
Any other questions of staff? None? Okay, we do have a public comment. Maria Villegas.
Good evening. My name is Maria Villegas, and thank you. Okay, I got another appraisal, and it came to 442,000. So that's why I talked to them already, and I told them that I was going to come and tell you the new appraised value. Because we want to replace that place. We want to buy another one because that one is a rental. It's a part of our income. So we want to buy another one similar to that one. And 405, it was the offer before. And the prices went up, and we don't have enough to replace the property. So that's why we got a new appraised value, and it came to 442,000. And I want to talk to you and ask you if you can approve this price. That way we can buy another one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more comments with respect to this item from the public? Hearing none. We have no applicant rebuttal. I'm taking it. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion.
so which appraisal, if we do eminent domain, which appraisal do we use? The 405?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, at this point, at this evening, really, this is just about the resolution of necessity and the 4 findings. In the event that a settlement could be reached, I mean, there's the opportunity for continued negotiations. And if there is some sort of settlement to be reached between the parties, it could proceed down that route. If we end up in eminent domain, that's part of the proceeding, is to determine the value, and so that would be part of the eminent domain proceedings. Again, not something that is before the council tonight. It's whether to adopt the resolution of necessity, make the findings on the 4 elements that Mr. Preciado covered. And that does not mean that there wouldn't be an opportunity still to try and resolve this before fully embarking on the eminent domain process.
So to paraphrase, basically is that we'll continue with negotiations with the property owner and come to some sort of settlement. This is just the resolution to move this process forward.
I would say that there are a couple of different paths available. One is reaching a settlement. The other is that we don't reach a settlement and we'd need to proceed with the eminent domain process. The action tonight would enable pursuing that track as well.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Councilmember Duncan said it right. This is not easy to do. This is, so far since I've been on the council, one of the more difficult items we've had to discuss, and now I think it's happened twice. With that being said, however, I do believe that the project is necessary for the betterment of the city of Yucaipa, and I believe that all 4 points mentioned by Fermin Preciado, A, B, C, and D, are all valid. I support it, unfortunately, but I think that the concept of having to do this process with every resident up and down Avenue E from Bryant to 7th Street, theoretically, is the burden lies on this decision tonight. So I will support this resolution and move approval of item number 25.
Anything?
This is some of the most difficult things we have to deal with on the dais, in my opinion. I agree with Mr. Duncan that it's never an easy thing to announce that we're going to have to take your property, take your land. Unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with this, working with San Bernardino County Transportation Agency, where we've had to literally take swaths of land of people's hard-earned businesses, and it's never a comfortable feeling. But sometimes it has to be done, and I just want to assure the applicant, the speaker, that we will do everything we can to negotiate a fair settlement with you. This is not, the numbers here in the presentation are just the history, but we will continue to work with you until we can come to some sort of satisfactory resolution for both parties. Okay, we'll go ahead and did you make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this does require 4/5 vote minimum. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have 4 affirmative votes for the record. This motion passes. Okay. Moving on to announcements. Are there any announcement council members wish to make?
Just that the Joe Nichols concert, everybody said it was fantastic. And I'm not sure how you got that. I saw expenditures for 12.5, 12.5. Not sure how you got that act that cheap, but he just came from a different venue so that was a great acquisition and a great concert. So thank you very much.
Good job. I had family that attended it last night, and they just had a bang-up time. Anything else? Anybody got anything going on in the future? Okay.
I get to work graveyard tonight.
And I'll be sleeping while you do. All right, closed session items. Do we have any closed session tonight?
We do, Mr. Mayor. We have one item, conference with legal counsel. It's regarding anticipated litigation, potential initiation of litigation, and it's one case. There would not be reportable action this evening.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience on this for tonight. We'll go ahead and close the open session and move on to closed session. Thank you very much.